what we did was we studied about files, and then we learned how the files are organized on the hard disk, and then from the hard disk, that is the persistent memory. That means you, even when you switch off the PC, the data is still intact. From there, we try to read data using a simple function called as open, and there are several different modes. There is read mode, write mode, append mode, and there are combinations of this. And then we read the file. By default, text file is supported in Python. That means people have written code to read the data and put it in format of text. So that is about statistics class, and also we looked at few functions which we can look into the object and then see their attributes and what are the operations inside that. So today we looked at this car as an example, and also we try to look what are the functions inside a list and things like that. Okay. So in today's session, we will. This is not a session particular to Python. This is a session something that is related to data interchange formats. The reason that we need to learn about data interchange formats is because um, uh, there are in your automation or in your software development process, there will be a time where you will either process XML, JSON, or HTML, or some kind of data exchange format, and then you will look into the data and then parse data out of it. So so there are several uses of this. We will look into that in a while. So we'll look at how the data exchange formats have evolved, and how it is useful for us. And then we will also look at small example. We will take some JSON information from an web API, and we will try to parse that. So by doing this, what we will understand is we can use multiple data types. That means data type nested data types. That is, data types can contain data types inside that. For example, list of maps of maps, and there can be multiple maps, maps inside those maps. So we'll also learn to parse these kind of data types, and so let us get into that. Okay. So what is the need for data interchange formats? Okay. So there is one of the questions that you might be thinking: what is the need of all this JSON and XML? Why don't you simply use text files to interchange data? So what I'll do is I'll get into drawing mode. Okay. So so let us go from the basics. In the first class, we studied that we had a RAM. So I will always go back to this so that it helps you to remember, and it helps you to understand the need of these things, that why it has emerged. Okay. So we had RAM, and then there are several processes inside this RAM. So process 1, process 2, process 3, and things like that. So once the process is spawned by operating system, so there is no communication between this process and this process by default. So in order to make these two processes talk, so we need some kind of variable or an intermediate piece of memory that is in RAM, that is used by both of these processes. So this calls for inter-process communication. So that is about inter-process communication, and then there are several ways that operating system provides, such as shared memory. You might have heard about shared memory, process queues, semaphores, and all these things. So once this is done, now the thing is, now we are not, in today's world, we are not using only one computer. We are using multiple computers without even knowing it. For example, when you access internet, there are several computers that are connected to your computers, your Google server, and for example, this particular you are connected to, in fact, you are connected to my computer. That is why you are able to see the screen and we are able to talk. That is, and on your mobile, it is always connected to Play Store or things like that. So there are several. Now the PCs does not exist independently. because we always exchange data in between these multiple pieces. So now from interprocess communication, we have multiple pieces now. So we have pieces all over the place, and now these pieces are connected using certain cables. If you're using its Wi-Fi, but internally it's all internet connection. Okay. So this once we have these multiple computers, there are several things. One thing is OS is different, could be different. There are several OS. You could be using Windows 7, I could be using Windows 10, I could be using Linux, it doesn't matter. You could be using Mac, and on top of that, you could be using a browser, which is you could be using Google Chrome, you could be using Edge, you could be using Safari, Firefox, on all these things. So now we have a single in when you have single PC, you don't have all these problems. You don't have to worry about all these problems. So you just dump the data here and other process reads. Now this process, one process from one computer needs to communicate with another process in another computer. For example, when we try to connect data from Google, so this is Google server, and it has data from their hard disk or from their memory. You are trying to access the data inside your computer. So this inter-process communication is always happening, and since there are several different technologies, both of these processes are using different technologies. That means that they do not know what kind of technology it is using inside that. For example, it could be written in C, C++, or Java, or whatever the language it is. So now the challenge is, how do we make sure that these two people these two computers communicate? So that is why we have browsers, and browsers send data usually in HTML format. Okay, HTML is nothing but hypertext markup language, and the data that you see on your mobiles or when you are browsing internet, it is all HTML, and internally it might have certain other things such as CSS and JavaScripts, but basically it is HTML. So that means there is a protocol to communicate between these two pieces. There are several protocols, so I'm just telling one of them so that you can relate. So in between these two pieces, we have a way to communicate between these two pieces, that is HTML. And now we have moved from single system to multiple system, and we have developed protocols. So typically, of course, there is a OSI. There is something called as protocol stack, which is actually called as OSI model layer. So it will be having physical how this HTML gets the data is from your cable, and from the cable it goes to some TCP/IP stack, and then it goes to another stack, and then it comes to HTTP, and from there you get the data. So both of these two pieces must be having these two protocol stacks. So this is anyways, this is a big ocean, but this is how the processes communicate. So once I send data, request data from my PC, it goes all the way from here and back to here. So this is how the computers communicate in the internet world. So now once we try to send HTML, it is hypertext markup language. So in order now we need to represent the objects. The reason that we need to represent the objects is because represent the objects in form of text format. That is because a process that is having objects inside that, so it has certain object model, and then we need to communicate that object model to another computer, which is written in different technology. It doesn't know what are the technologies. It will use that text format and create its own object. So what we are trying to do is take one object. We'll look in next slide. So and then we are creating the same object, but it's all written in different technologies. For example, this could be this object could be realized in Google server as a Java object. It doesn't matter. So it tries to generate a JSON or a text format, some text format, and this text format is sent via internet, and inside your browser or your program, you take that and you create another object. Now this could be realized in Python or any other language, so it doesn't matter. So now what are we trying to do is we are trying to transfer objects from one PC to another PC. So it can happen in the same PC as well. So the need for this particular JSON or XML is because we have multiple PCs and they need to communicate. All right. So so what we have done essentially is so inter-process communication, we had a single PC and there was no problem, people are happy. And now we have multiple computers. How do we send the data? Then there are several protocol stacks and people used to use that. Now there were several lot of technologies breakthrough, that is there are thousands of languages, there are hundreds of different OS and its versions, and to manage this there need to be a way to communicate. So one of them was XML. XML is nothing but extended markup language. We'll look into that in a while. JSON is nothing but JavaScript object notation. So it doesn't mean that only JavaScript uses that, but it is just that JavaScript, this JSON was the idea of this JSON was incubated in the JavaScript world. So that is why it is called as JSON. Well, it doesn't matter. Any other language can simply read it. We'll look into those in a moment. Okay. So I'll try to give an example. So in your Excel sheet, what you can do is you can in today's world, that is that the COVID is ongoing and things like that. So if you have a data that all have a data which is containing entire country's COVID data, and we have a big object, that is I'll just get into drawing mode, change the color so that it's not confusing. Okay. So we have entire India. So this is a big object. Now we are thinking in terms of object oriented way. So this is a big object, and inside that states are smaller objects. So there are multiple states, maybe around 30. So we are taking just two objects just for our understanding purposes, and inside those we have smaller objects. So these are districts. So we have country, and we have states, and we have districts. Okay. So now we have this hierarchy. So this hierarchy, how do we represent in Excel sheet? So since we are used to Excel sheet, so you can simply make a table, something like this, entire India table, and then you can simply put Karnataka here, and then maybe a new tab here, and then inside that district names and things like that. So it is easy to visualize in format of Excel. But any questions? Okay. So once we have this hierarchy, so we need to represent this hierarchy in some format, in a text format. So how do we represent that in terms of in a text file? So these representations are nothing but the object notations. Okay. So that is why these notations are also called as object notations or data interchange formats, because we are going to use it to interchange the data between two pieces. All right. So if I want to get active cases in say Chikmagalur, so if I just simply say active cases is equal to 50, that we won't have any information such as and someone mute. I think you're not on mute. Okay. So if I say active cases is 50, so we won't come to know from where this 50 is coming. So if I tell that you have India, and then you have Karnataka, and then inside Karnataka we have Chikmagalur, and then we have active cases, then we know that okay, this active cases belongs to Chikmagalur, and Chikmagalur belongs to Karnataka, and Karnataka belongs to India. So this is the hierarchy that can be formed in terms of JSON or HTML. This XML. So just let us just look at how do we represent this particular object. So this is just for visualization. So this is a big object, and this is they are smaller objects. So how do you represent it in form of JSON or XML? So you can see that. So this is an example for JSON. That the thing you are seeing on your right is an example for JSON. So now the same object is taken and broken down into several objects. So you can see that this Chikmagalur is an object inside this Karnataka. So we have just drawn boxes, and then this entire JSON is India. So this let me just get into drawing mode so that we have visualization. So we saw that this entire India is one big object. So this can be represented in text format in JSON. So there are several formats. We'll just look at them. What are the different formats? So this is India, and then this particular state can be represented here. This is one state. Okay. And this particular district can be represented like this. Okay. So this is how the object notation can be put inside the text. So you might be asking, why do we need to have flower brackets and things like that? That is because this is just a format for our visualization, but you can put all of this in a single line, and just like any other languages, like in Python, we see that if you see a column, that means there is a block that is coming inside that. So similarly, once the program sees that JSON has an opening brace, that means it is a sub block. Okay, let me try to escape this. Try to mute. I think there is a slight disturbance.
Digant, please mute other participants.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Okay. Oh, I think it was coming from here. Okay, thanks. Alright, where was that? View slideshow. My function key is not working. That is where this circus from current slide. Okay. Alright. So what we were doing is now we have represented a visual format into a text format. Okay. So this is an example of JSON. So there are several. I was telling that there are several other object notations. I will just show you what are the different object notations, and we'll just look at XML as well. Data interchange format. Wiki. So there is several data interchange formats. I think types. This is not all. You might have heard about say for example YAML, YAML, XML, and all this. These are other which have come and gone. So, but JSON is one of the most used in today's world, and YAML is also used, and XML is also used. So there used to be a lot of other data exchange formats. So these were you must understand that the genesis of these languages, or due to there are several technologies and several architectures and things like that. So these technologies should be independent of information that we exchange. For example, we have learned English in spite of our mother tongue languages. So that is because we are standardizing our way of communication so that we all of us have a common understanding, and then we translate our ideas into English, and then we speak. It's similar to that. Internally, computer has its own language. Say Java has its own. You can write classes inside that, and Python you can write. We have written lists and maps and things like that, and these are objects that is particular to that process. If I want to send this particular information in a keeping the relationship intact, so that relationship is what we are looking at. Okay. So this is my relationship. So I simply drawn that diagram, and then I have represented that in terms of JSON here. Okay. So similarly, the same data can be represented in XML like this. So you can see that in XML. So the major differences, you might have seen this already. You might have come across, but your visualization will change that. XML is not the only way. So there are JSON. Just now we looked at Yaml and things like that. So there are several. So this particular total India is represented here. This total thing including root. So in XML it is a tree format usually. So this is a root, and then root has certain nodes. These nodes are nothing but Karnataka, and there could be other states here. Inside this Karnataka we have Ballari here, and then we have Chikmagalur. So this is XML is based on tree structure. So so there we can represent hierarchical data. Now if I say active cases are 39, so that is a vague information. If I simply say if I simply ask your friend that, okay, tell your friend that active cases are 39, he will obviously ask you, okay, active cases are 39, where? So you will ask Chikmagaluru. So if he doesn't know Chikmagaluru is a place, so you must, what is Chikmagaluru? Then you will say it is in Karnataka. Then okay, he understands that. If he is not from our country, then you must also say that, okay, Karnataka is a place in India. So now they will automatically relate this number into this hierarchical structure: India, Karnataka, Chikmagalur, and then you have active cases. That means the actual data is present in this leaf node. So this is the ending node, and then this is somehow represented, has a hierarchy, and then we can easily send this data in format of XML, and the other program which is extracting this can be they have their own libraries. Since XML, JSON, all these in data interchange formats are used heavily in all the languages. I haven't heard of any language which doesn't support JSON or XML. So in all the languages there are libraries which we simply import it, or if you are coming from Java or C++, you just need to do include, and then you use that library and then extract the data. So once you import the library and try to call some function and give this text file, so it will create objects like this. Okay, we will see in a moment. So this is how we will see about JSON in a moment. So now we have visually we have converted the data that was in our minds into a text data, keeping the relationships intact. So that is all you need to keep in your mind. So that is about JSON and XML. We will get into the code, and we will do some exercises so that whatever we have studied, it comes into your mind. Okay. So what we'll do is we will take an example of COVID-19, and then I have an API which actually gives you that COVID data. Okay, so that API is here. Okay, So we have an API is nothing but application programming interface. It's just a in web, if you are using if you are in context of web, it is a URL, and if you are using in context of processes and linear programs, it's just a function. So it's like you call that particular URL or function, it gives you some data. So that is all about API. Okay. So in this API, this is just you might have seen that if I in this Wikipedia, if I simply click on this or enter this URL into the this one, so what you get is you get this page. So how were you able to get this page? So that's very a simple concept. So once you right click and look at view source, what is happening is you can see all this data is in text format. This is not a binary format, that is this is readable. So it is simply a text format. This simple text format is converted into this beautiful structure. That means like a book or something. So it has diagrams, it has certain places, and it has tabs, all these things that we see normally. So the source of this is nothing but a simple text. So you can see that this text has certain tags. So these tags are called as these are called as tags, and in HTML context, these are called as HTML tags. That is why these languages are these are like mini languages. Actually, it's not a complete language. So that is why it is called as markup language. That is why this ML comes in. So just now we saw that XML, that ML in XML is nothing but markup language. Why it is called as markup language is because we are marking a data in between two tags. So this is title, this is end starting tag, and this is ending tag. So forget about what title does, but this is a keyword in HTML, and you embed this text data inside these two tags. That is why it is called as markup language, since I am marking this text. So similarly in XML, we just saw in XML, so I am marking up this 39 here in between these two tags, active. So this is not a keyword, this is user defined keywords. So that is why it is called as XML, extended markup language. But in HTML, there are certain certain tags which you need to use. Alright. So that is how the HTML and XML differs. Okay. So I was okay. The reason that I was showing you this was, usually when you browse internet, you get HTML like this. But you can also sometimes you can also get any other text data. That means you can simply send any text such as this text. You can simply send this text data. Okay, and then you can send. If I send this data, for example, this some normal text data, so it doesn't make any sense, because the other program doesn't know how to parse it, and it doesn't make any sense. So in order to give data in certain format so that the other program understands, we need certain organized text format. That means this is in fact a text file, but it is organized. So how it is organized is what we just studied. Okay, so we have all the states here in this JSON. So once you click this, instead of sending this kind of HTML that we saw here, and this HTML is converted into this format by the browser, that is Google Chrome or whatever the browser that you might be using, Firefox, Safari, all these browsers. And instead of that, I am sending this JSON, but there is no way that the browser is not programmed to organize this in a certain format. So if there is a program which can convert this into Excel sheet, that is a different program. That means you can also write maybe modules or plugins into this browser which can take this data and for maybe put it in a structure which is understandable by normal humans. That means only programmers can make out this is a JSON. For normal users, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, there is some data, there are some braces. They don't understand why there are braces. Okay, so the reason I told you this is because when you request for data, either it can come as HTML or it can come as any other text format. So data interchange between two computers can happen through JSON. Now once I send this request, I got this data. So in my program, how do I make use of this? So let me just go into get into programs. Variables. Let me open a new file. Okay, so let me use some libraries. We'll learn about this libraries in future as well. So there is a library called as requests, and in this library you can simply send import requests, and since you don't have to remember anything, what you do is you try to look inside request. How do I what are the various functions that it provides? Okay, so then you look into that and you see that okay, what could be this one. So I can use get. So requests dot get, and then you can pass the URL. I'll simply paste this URL. Okay, so what I'm essentially doing is it is as good as clicking or putting this inside the browser. So inside the browser, I'm just putting this here and pressing enter, and then it is giving me it is giving me the data. So in the protocol we have several different codes, and which tells that whether the request was fine or not. That is what you are seeing it here. Okay, so don't worry about this, we'll learn about these codes. Now how do I collect that particular data? Now here we are doing through the browser, here we are doing programmatically. Now imagine that computer which is giving this data is using some other technology, maybe it is using Java. Now here we are using Python to extract that data and try to get that data. Okay, data is equal to this, and now same data can be looked into like this. So if you look at this data, this is the same exact data that we got on the browser, but as you know that this /n is nothing but new line. So all this data is the same thing, but there is no formatting. That is because we don't worry about the format. We just need these blocks telling that okay, this is the starting of the block and this is where it belongs. So this is exactly the same data that you are getting here. So this is about how we get the data through the request module. That is, it connects. It's like a mini browser. It's not, we cannot call it browser because browser has a lot of functionality. What it does is it sends the request to another PC that is hosted on this api.covidindia.org. So it connects that PC, and this PC sees that okay, I'm getting this request. So what kind of request it gets? It gets there are different commands in HTTP protocol. Now here we are using get. So in this protocol we do get and then get the data. It returns the data. Okay, it's just like a function call, but this function call is executed on another machine. So far we were just executing functions in the same PC. So you can imagine that you are executing a function in another PC without even knowing the function name and things like that, because you know what is the input data. Input data is nothing but this URL, and you know what is that you need to expect out of it. So here we are just expecting the data out of it. Okay, So let me just take this and put this in our program. So this is how you try to build line by line, and then now you can in Python there is a library which can simply give you handles um, to work through this as JSON. For example, I got this data, and if I do .json, what it does is, so now you see that there is no /n which we were seeing here up here. Now this JSON once I called this function, this is converted into, let us see what is the type of data. So I don't want to tell because it won't be explorative, so I'll just store this data into a variable. Now I have sent this URL and got some information which is in text format, and that text format, raw text, we saw it here, it's a raw text. Now this function inside this object, this object is also called as a response object, because once you send a request you get a response. So let us see what is the data type of this X. So data type, how do we see? We just put X. So you can see that this is a dictionary. That means this function, let us see what is the type of data. You can see that this data is type of request.models.response. This is of a type response. This is a user defined data type which is coded inside this requests library, and then once we send this this particular URL, it is sent to another PC which is that api.covid.org. So this will be in fact it will have an IP address, then the DNS will search that particular PC and it will send a request to that PC. That PC has sent you back the response. Okay, let us give some other a wrong URL. So I'm just giving this as changing to orig because it doesn't exist. So let us see what will happen. Okay, again I'm going to send the request. So if I look into this, okay, I need to change it here because I'm working here. Okay. Now it's telling that okay, this is a this guy got an error, that the request module got an error saying that that is a wrong connection. Okay, the same thing I can simply do this here as well. I will put some invalid address. So what is it telling? This site cannot be reached, IP address could not be found. That means there is no there is no PC which is having this particular API. Okay, so that is coming from your DNS server. Okay, so once you have the right, you have to make sure that you have right URL, you are connecting to right PC. Okay, and then you get some data. Okay, so let us try to get data of Wikipedia so that you have a clear picture about what we are doing. Wikipedia, what happens then? Okay, so I showed you that in the view source you have a simple text. How do you get that simple text? We'll just take this. Now I have collected the data. Let me look at the text data, that is the raw data that is inside the, let me enlarge this. Okay. Data dot text. Okay, so this is the HTML the same HTML that we saw here. Here. Okay, so the new lines are just formatted here, but apart from that it's the same exact data that we got on the browser. That means the browser's some functionality is present here. Okay, now we have a browser which is invisible. You don't need a browser, you can simply close and you can see the data. So for example, if I have a program which runs which makes this, a dashboard. Let me look at COVID dashboard India. Okay. For example, if you are building this website, or if you are building a program on your mobile or an app, so you might be having a dashboard that looks like this. Let it open like this. All right. So the input that you are getting is maybe, just imagine, maybe that is here in the JSON. That is because imagine that there are several doctors who are working, and all the doctors collect this day-to-day data and then send it to let me get into drawing mode so that we have visualization. How this data might have been collected. Okay, so we have a lot of districts, lot of villages here. So these are small villages, several villages, and these villages are connected to taluks, and these taluks are connected. So there are several taluks here. This is taluk level, and there are several taluks are connected to district. So the doctors, that is, they are working in PHC, PS, these healthcare centers or private hospitals, whatever. They give the data maybe to Tahsildar. From the Tahsildar, it goes to DC, and maybe DC office. That means not himself, and then this data is collected and sent back to central government. Maybe before that, there is a state government. So all this data is somehow updated in one single place. So that single place is maybe in an Excel sheet, but the programmers might have written the program to put that in this format. So the reason that they have put in this format is because you can use this data and make your own dashboards and things like that. So you don't have to worry about the representation. You only need to worry about the information. So the representation, I could be using a dashboard, I could be as well making an Excel sheet out of this, I could be making a PPT out of this, I could be making a PDF out of this. So that doesn't matter. So representation and the information is now decoupled. So this is the main use of data interchange format. Okay, so that is so let us imagine that is how the information is collected, and it is put into one central government place, maybe in secretary's office, and from there the programmers sitting in their secretary office might have written programs to take this data from this JSON data and then display it here. So that is how now these programmers are not connected, they don't know each other, but still they are able to work together and make this dashboard. Okay, so that is one of the examples. So the another example I could give is, so imagine that there is a department, say for example in Maruti Suzuki factory, and there are two departments. One is production department, another department is sales department. So in production department, you know that the production is always happening, and then it has several models of cars, and there are inside those particular models you have different kinds of other models, such as engine model and what is the type of tire and all these things. So each of the cars have different objects inside this. That means you have a bigger objects. The biggest object is here is as a factory, and inside that factory you have cars, and inside those cars you have parts, and inside those parts you have sub parts. So this has a hierarchy. That means if you go to a sales department and say I need say clutch, I need a replacement clutch. So obvious question that he will ask is what clutch? Okay, we have clutches. What clutch? Here, then you must say that okay, this is my model, that is Maruti Suzuki, and this is the car, and then Maruti Suzuki 800 maybe. Now the production has stopped, but the understanding is okay, you get for 800. Okay, you have clutch, and then this guy in the sales department, he will type inside that computer and verify whether you have clutch available in the factory. Now, how does factory data is communicated into manufacturing unit? Maybe they are using same software, that is a different way. Now, all these showrooms might be using some other software. So how does their software come to know about this data, particular data? So you need to send data in format of certain format, maybe XML, maybe text, or maybe they have sent through Excel sheet. But if you need a live data or something like that where humans are not involved, in the factory there is a program, every day it is updated, what kind of products and what kind of cars are getting produced, and automatically updates the database. And when you click something like Maruti Suzuki dot get products, and in the sales department he gets all the information automatically. There are no humans involved. So in olden days, what people used to do, people used to send books over posts. That means okay, these are in this month I have produced this many cars, and this many cars have this specifications, and people would courier this data into another office. So this manual intervention and all this trouble is taken away by using this kind of data interchange format. So but the problem is, if you say simply send something like if I write it down, something like, okay, in Maruti Suzuki, something like okay, Suzuki 34 cars and some specifications like this. So this doesn't make any sense for humans to read, and it doesn't make any sense for the programs also to read it. So you need to tell that Maruti Suzuki has engine something like this, and engine is of maybe something like this, some capacity or something like this. Now I can make sense of this data because this is organized. Since I'm tab separating, it is visible for us. But for computers, it is difficult for them to not difficult, but there is a history. So in order to tell that there is a block coming in, so you can tell that, okay, this is the block, and this is a sub block, and this is ending of block, and this is ending of block. So you can put all of this in a single line, it doesn't matter, like this. So without any tabs and things like that. But there is a data interchange format which works on tabs and spaces, that is Yaml. You can see an example of Yaml. So in this you don't find any braces, just like our Python. It is just having, okay, sorry for that. You can search through that. So this is one of the other data interchange format. For example, this here. So Martin, so if you put everything in a single line, it's difficult to know where this name belongs to. Here it's Martin. Martin has a name called as Martin here. His job is developer, his skill is elite. So this is how it can be represented. Same data in terms of YAML. So can you convert one format to another format? Yes, you can easily convert. That's a very simple thing. In fact, you can write programs to do that, or online there are several tools where you can interchange for your understanding purpose. So just if you just type JSON to XML, you will get data. So the total idea here that you must understand is that now I am extracting the data from one PC to another PC in a organized text format. Such text formats are JSON, XML, and YAML and things like that. So we will study about JSON more in coming class. That is because in our mini project we will use the project statement that I have prepared is that we will use this particular JSON, and we will do some kind of processing, and we will send a report. Okay, so that problem statement I will tell you. So we will send a report, and then we'll also make some kind of analytics with that and things like that. Okay, so that is why we are studying about JSON. Okay, so any questions so far in JSON, XML, or anything? So now we are converted from a simple text that was JSON, and we have converted back to now dictionary. So any questions? I will jump into dictionaries, how we converted from this data, and we can realize in terms of dictionary. Any questions you can ask? I'll just try. Okay, so no questions, we can jump into the into next level. So I have collected. Now how do I realize that, okay, now we were saying that, okay, there are different objects inside another computer using their programs, they are representing something, and then we are collecting that objects in a certain format and taking into my PC. So how do I make an object out of this? So how do I make object out of this, and how do I make use of this? That's the obvious question. So now we have got the text data. From the text data, we converted into dictionaries. So how did we convert to dictionary? Using JSON. I think this contains. Okay. So now this particular URL was Wikipedia URL. So we had got HTML. So this HTML text cannot be converted to maps, and it is not a JSON. So input is JSON and output is dictionary. That is why it is complaining. So we need to change it back to this. So now this is a text format which is a proper JSON. So this JSON, I can take this and simply convert into my data. So that I had converted into X. So this data was simple response text, and then from that response I am extracting converting that data into the dictionary. So that means now I have an object simply from this plain text. So I had this plain text, now I have converted that into object. Now you might be asking, okay, that you have converted into object, that is fine. So how do I access elements that are inside this? For example, you are showing that in Chikmagalur, I think it's not there. Okay, in Chikmagalur, I want to get active cases in Chikmagalur. So how do I know that? Okay. So that is very simple. So X is a dictionary. So entire thing is a dictionary. Now let us look at what are the keys inside dictionary. Okay, what are the keys here? So dictionary keys are all these state names. So let us get into one of the states. So how do we access the state in map? So you just pass the keys. So one of the keys, that is Karnataka here. Now I have accessed that particular state, and inside that we know that if we send the key inside a dictionary, you get value. Okay, so this is the value. So entire district data is coming under is kept as a value. So that I was telling that dictionaries can contain dictionaries inside. So I will just store it into something like lists. Okay. So let us look at the type of lists. That is the value of. So it is again a dictionary. That means I had a dictionary called as X. Inside that, the keys are in this text, that is a string, and inside that those keys, those are mapped to values. In turn, the values are again a dictionary. So how do I access Chikmagalur? Okay, so inside this disk, so let me look into the keys. So there are only two keys. That means one is district data and one is state code. So that is a temporary key that programmers have written there, so that you can also extract data from the state code. Okay, so let us get into district data. So that is where our information is residing. So let us get into that information. Now we have all the district names inside Karnataka. So this is just a dump of the entire data. So let us get only the keys from this. Okay, this is district data. I can simply use keys like this. Now I got all the district names here. Now what I'm trying to do, I'm stepping down from one hierarchy inside the actual data. Okay, these are the keys. Fine. So we used to store that in a variable. In fact, you can directly access it like this. Let me get into Chikmagalur. Where is Chikmagalur? Chikmagalur. Here. Okay, this is Chikmagalur, and inside this Chikmagalur, what are the what is the data that I have? Let me just see what is the type of this whole thing. This type is again a dictionary. You can see that these are two braces. So that means it can be either a set or dictionary. How do I know that it's a dictionary? It has key and value pairs separated by comma. So that means it's a dictionary. So that is how we visually look and recognize it. So programmatically, you can just type, you can use this function and find out what is the type of that data. Okay, so this is of type this one. So let me get and try to get active cases inside that. So this active cases, so you have to put this in a string, that is because they are not variables. So active cases in Chikmagaluru as of today is 716. Okay, so that is how the object that was in someone else's computer is somehow transferred into our computer. So this is something like it's actually happening in our day-to-day lives. For example, if you watch some guitar videos or some tutorials on internet, so the person who is sitting, maybe he's in Russia or he's in America or Japan, whatever the place is, the idea that he has got is, okay, I need to teach guitar, and from there he breaks down that parts of guitar sessions into different pieces. That means, okay, this is your first class to just to understand about strings and things like that, and how the music gets produced in there. But he will be thinking he's in his mother tongue, maybe in Japanese or whatever it is, and then he writes it down in English, and then he makes a video. And then he makes a video. If you don't know the language, maybe Google is translating it to you, maybe he is telling in English from his idea. Then you are looking at that video and you are learning from his mind. So the idea that is generated in his mind, now it is put into your mind. So that is how the humans we have been communicating, and that format, instead of text format, that the data we are consuming is via our eyes. So that is our visualization. So we are programmed to see and recognize objects and then hear through our ears. So eyes and ears are our input interfaces, just like our this interface, this API interface. So once I read this, so these are ears and eyes are nothing but like whatever we have imported. So we import that. That means it's already fit into our body. So we import that, and the eyes and ears have become alert, and you try to take the data into your mind and form a idea about it. Now you can learn guitar. That means there is someone is sitting somewhere else in the world. He is transferring his ideas into your brain. So similarly, his bring up, his whatever the technologies that he is using, everything else is it is immaterial. He might be speaking Japanese, he may be eating noodles, it doesn't matter. But the same data that he has communicated to you is consumed by us. So we might be speaking Kannada, Telugu, or Marathi, whatever it is, but there is a common language, maybe English or something. Even if you don't know English, if you just see how the guitar is played and if he is explaining, you can simply try to grab at least the pieces of it. So that is how humans have been communicating. Same thing is being done by programs, but programs need more specific information. So that specific information and hierarchy is represented in text format. So like this. So this, when you enlarge it for a bigger data, it is like this. So now we have come down all the way from the country inside Chikmagaluru, and we have found out what are the total number of active cases in Chikmagaluru. So this is by eyes we are finding out. From the program we have found out like this. Okay, so this is how we have this is how the data interchange is happening between the computers. So there are several different formats, but JSON and XML is mostly used. In fact, for example, if you want to build an automation framework or something like that, so you need to get information from, say, you're automating a router or a switch or a base station. So the configuration can be extracted from that particular node into JSON or XML, and then you can take that into your automation machine. Now maybe it's a Jenkins machine or whatever it is, and then you can read that and find out what is the configuration. For example, you can set quality of service in routers. So if you want to set quality of service into high or low, you can take that configuration service and then you can modify that configuration service, and then if there is an interface to modify back, and then you can send data back to that particular router saying that okay, I need this kind of data, and that configuration data will get into that router, and then the functions that is written, maybe that router is written in C++, it doesn't matter. Your automation framework is written in Python, it doesn't matter, but the information that you're exchanging is via a common hierarchical or organized format of data, so which is helping us to make things work. So now I am able to easily change the QoS or the quality of service in the router, or at least I am able to see what is the quality of service in the router. So this is just one of the simplest examples. So for example, if you are able to see all this information here, this information, maybe these routers are already sending what is its properties via some other format. Maybe it is XML or whatever it is, but your PC's information from other computers is automatically transferred. We are not using browser or anything here, so in the background always the data interchange is always happening. So that is about data interchange formats, and that is how we convert JSON from a simple text into dictionaries like this, and inside dictionaries we have now there is a way to access this. So that is about it. So how do we convert JSON into dictionary and things like that. So there are simple interfaces. Actually the lines of code that we have written is actually only 2 or 3 lines of code, but this whole concept requires a certain understanding and hierarchical understanding. So that is why we have learned from the basics, from the processes and things like that. Okay, so that is about it. That's all I had. Any questions, please ask. So we started from this and now we ended like this. So so there is also an assignment here. I will just show you the assignment. So you can do this on a weekend. So what you do is I will send this link. You use this link and then you write a program to generate Chief Minister report. Chief Minister report, in the sense, what you need to do is now I have showed you how to get a particular district's the active cases. What you do is you collect all the active cases and sum it up of all the districts and give me, if I ask in input, if I say I need data from Karnataka, and it should print total number of cases. That is all the it must go into all the districts automatically. That is Ballari, Chikmagalur, and all these places, and then it should give total number of cases like this. So you don't have to do about other two things. If you have time, you can do that, but at least calculate the total number of cases in a particular state. So input is Karnataka. So either you can, yesterday we learned how to take input from the keyboard. You take this as input, and output should be this number. Maybe it is different now, but yeah, you must automatically calculate all the data that is here. For example, Chikmagalur has active cases 39 here, Ballari has active cases 485 here. So you should sum these two up and give me the value. So this is a simple example, but you will face a lot of problems while programming. So unless you program, it's difficult to realize these concepts. So please try to do it over the weekend. All right. So any questions here?